Hey, this is Bruce Boudreau, and you're listening to Empty Betters with Nick, Mack, and Harrison. But listen, what about something like, hey, listen, we're the Empty Betters, and you want to lose your money? You bet on us.
Everybody, and welcome back to episode 133 of Empty Betters. I'm your host, Harrison Scholes. I'm going to toss it across the screen to my co-host, Nick Manella. Long time no see, my friend. How you been?
I know, right? It feels like it's been like a month, but it's really only been a week or two off, right?
I think maybe two and a half since our last recording. Obviously, got to get a little summer break in there. Detox
we'll call it
a little bit.
Firm two.
Affirm too. I'm with that. A nice little summer detox from all the chaos that is the NHL that we will talk about today. I am going to toss it across the screen to my other co-host up in Wisco, Mac Vogel. What's going on, my man?
Not much. I echo. It does feel like it's been a hot minute since we've all been on here, but as always, excited to talk hockey. Very excited to talk about all these deals that we've had over the past couple of weeks since we've been on. It was an exciting free agency.
You want to announce? I don't know if we've had an episode since about your little new position writing for the Caps.
Sure. Yeah, I did recently accept a role with Washington Hockey Now. If that sounds familiar to any of you, it's perhaps because you may follow Sammy Silber on Twitter. She's a great writer, and that's sort of her. That's her site basically that she runs. And so, yeah, I'll be covering the Caps this coming year for Washington Hockey Now. So appreciate it in advance for checking out some of those stories that you'll see over the course of the season.
Absolutely, man. Congratulations.
Yeah, echo that. Can't wait to hear your expert analysis of their goaltending situation this year. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And I am going to toss it across the screen to our lovely intern, Jackson Gross. What is going on, my man?
Been keeping myself out of trouble.
Nice.
Just lots of work going on, writing some articles, some baseball articles recently, but been doing that. Lots of yard work this summer, trying to be outside as much as possible. So it's been a good summer so far.
It builds character, right? That's what we're told.
Exactly.
I read your NFL division preview for, was it the AFC South, I believe?
Correct. Yes.
Who you got winning that division?
Tennessee. Everyone else is dog shit, and the Colts are mediocre. So
I didn't know if you were going to end up going with the Colts. That might be a sore subject for Manila over here, but he's pretty honest about his teams.
Yeah, it's just been, they've made it so hard to root for them like the last 2 years because I fucking hate Phillip Rivers. But like Matt Ryan, I'll take it. Why not?
Yeah.
Only 4 years too late.
There you go. Well, we're not that far from football season, as you all know, but for the moment, we are in the, I guess, back half of NHL free agency, which is what today's episode is all about. However, before we talk about all the free agency news, we are extremely excited to tell you guys that today's interview guest is Washington Capitals legend, all-time great goaltender in the NHL, Olie Kolzig. We were very fortunate to be joined by Olie for this interview. We can't thank him enough. We know you guys are going to love this one. Some great stories, the late 90s Caps teams. We talk about Yager. We've got him with young Ovi and Semin. It's a great one. So we're not going to delay that one. We're going to let you guys listen to that here shortly. But before we do, we just want to remind you guys that this episode is brought to you by Brackish Life. If you're like us and grew up on the water and outdoors, then Brackish Life is perfect for you. They have a wide selection of gear from UV shirts to hoodies and hats. It's Real Bay apparel made by Real Bay people. Head to www.brackish.life today to check them out. A little salty, a little fresh, Brackish Life. We are going to toss it off to Olie Kolzig right now.
All right, and it is now my pleasure to introduce to the Empty Betters podcast a very special guest, Mr. Olie Kolzig. How you doing? Thanks for being with us.
I'm doing good, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yep. So those who are listening, obviously one of the longest tenured Caps players, long time goalie for the Caps, started back in 1989 all the way through 2008, and then 08, 09, briefly with the Tampa Bay Lightning as well. We'd love to talk about a lot of that, but before we get to some of that, Olie, we'll start this off same way we do with all of our guests. If you just kind of want to take us way back and tell us a little bit about how you first fell in love with the game of hockey and how you first started playing.
So I was born in South Africa, spent a couple of years there, moved to Europe for a little bit. My dad was in the hotel business, and he got transferred to Edmonton when I was about 4 years old. So we moved to Canada. My dad was a big hockey fan growing up in Europe. Don't necessarily know if he watched a lot of the NHL, because obviously TV wasn't as big a deal then as it is now, but he decided to get me in the game, introduce me to the game. And in Edmonton, when you're starting out as a youngster, you got introduced playing on the outdoor rinks. And if you've ever been to Edmonton in the middle of January, it's not a pleasant game to play.
Yeah.
So he got me involved. I enjoyed it actually quite a bit until that first time I went in net, ironically. When you're a youngster, they rotate you through all the positions. And so it was my turn to play goal. And I just remember I was miserable. I was just sitting there freezing, and this kid had a breakaway on me. And I thought to myself, there's no way I'm getting hit with this puck. So I actually scooted around the net and hid behind the net, let him score on the empty net, because I did not want to get hit with it. So like I said, it's ironic that I ended up having a NHL career as a goaltender, but well, that was it. I moved to Toronto when I was about 6 years old. I really started playing competitive hockey, and I became a full-time goaltender. I filled in one day for our guy that didn't show up for a game, and ended up getting a shutout, and enjoyed getting the pats on the back and all that. And I thought, well, this isn't too bad. And so I decided to, this is what I wanted to do. I kind of, think that the rest is history. I moved around still quite a bit. I got played in the national championship for midget hockey in the Air Canada Cup, and I was scouted by the New Westminster Bruins, which is now the Tri-City Americans. So I ended up getting listed by them and played a couple of years for them before I was drafted by Washington in 1989. And then slowly but surely, made my way to become full-time NHL guy. It took me a little while, probably longer than most organizations will give prospects, but I think it finally paid off, and for both the Caps and me.
Another question we always like asking guys, do you remember your draft day? Do you have like a fond memory of that day, or is it sort of a strange one, or what are your memories that you recall from that day?
No, I remember my draft day. I actually, I was at Caps development camp last week, and we had the scrimmage, which was held at Capital One Arena, and I did an in-between period interview with John Walton, and because we were talking about draft picks and prospects, they actually pulled up a clip of the moment I got announced, and I really couldn't, it was tough to watch the hairstyle back then, the lack of fashion sense. But no, I remember everything. I remember interviewing, with the Caps for about 2 weeks leading up to the draft. And I know it was myself and Byron Defoe. We were the two I know they were looking for a goaltender, and we were the two candidates. And I felt pretty good. First round, second round, I didn't care. I was just excited to get drafted and have a chance at playing in the NHL one day. And so when I did get my name called in the first round, I was ecstatic. I was so excited. My parents were there with me, and but I remember going down and doing all the the handshakes at the table, and then going in the back and doing the interviews, and I think because there was only 20 plus teams that at that point in the league, the second round had gone through pretty quick, and it was the Caps' turn to pick again. And I remember I was doing an interview, and I heard them select Byron Defoe with their second pick, and I'm like, son of a bitch. Because Byron and I back then didn't get along at all. We played Portland 16 times that year, and we just didn't like each other. And but once we went to training camp, we got to know each other. We obviously became best friends. But at the time, I was like, here I am thinking, okay, I've got a legit shot at being the guy, and now I got to compete with this guy and be in the organization with this guy for however many years. And but it was all good. It was still a very, very, very exciting day.
Am I correct that you guys had known each other from even way before that? Like you had grown up near each other or something like that? Or
So I moved to British Columbia shortly after that, the Year Canada Cup tournament, because that's where my dad had ended up working. He was in Victoria, BC, and Byron was from Victoria, and he was playing for the Juan Fuca Whalers of the BC JHL, and I'd played half a year for the Abbotsford Falcons, and then we both ended up playing in the WHL the same year. And so we played against each other for a couple of years before we made it to the Western League, and I just thought he was a very arrogant, very smug guy, and I don't like that, and I don't like that in players. And but yeah, that was my first taste of Byron, was shortly before we ended up playing in the Western League.
But you guys had a couple other run-ins. I believe I heard that you guys it was either you and his wedding, or he was best man at your wedding, or something along those lines.
It was both.
Okay. There you go.
I was married first, so he was best man at my wedding, and then the following year I was best man at his wedding. We're both godparents to each other's sons. So no, our relationship. We went to our first training camp. After that draft, we went to Sweden and Russia. We were, us and the Calgary Flames, the first two teams to be invited over there for camp. And Byron and I were the only two rookies that went. And so I wouldn't say we were forced to hang out together, but just natural, the two young guys. But hanging out with him and then getting to know him, and I obviously had a different view on him. I thought he was a great guy, and so we really hit it off, became best of friends, and had a fantastic trip over there. Great training camp. Both of us played well. And then I was a year older than him, so I started my pro career a year before him. So I spent 1 year in Baltimore, and then he came into town, and we actually both roomed together. We both were roommates, rented an apartment, and it was just. We had a. I mean, it was obviously a big rivalry. Two goalies fighting for a job in Washington, but at the end of the day, we both agreed that, hey, we just give our best on the ice, and at the end of the day, it's the head coach or management's decision on who plays. And so we didn't hold a grudge or hold it against each other, and I think as a result, we continue to this day to be great friends.
That's awesome to hear.
You briefly just touched on playing in Baltimore. I don't think I've ever gotten to ask this, but the Skipjacks kind of have this aura around them in the Baltimore community. All three of us kind of grew up in the Baltimore hockey program. What was that like? Because I don't think a lot of people who live in Baltimore now even remember that we had a team. I mean, my dad was a huge fan, so I kind of knew about it, but I'm curious what your experience was like as a player.
I loved it. I really loved playing in Baltimore. It obviously back then Baltimore actually had a lot of history, but I still wouldn't consider it a hockey town. Just a lot like the Caps. Washington wasn't considered a hockey town back then. But the fans that we did have were fantastic. Excuse me. That was the first real. That was my home building, but it was 10,000 seat arena. It was huge, and I remember we would go out after the game to PJ Crickets. I mean, I just turned 21.
That's great.
We would go, and the owner would always take care of us, and we had a great group of teammates, and we all kind of lived in the same apartment complex in Columbia, Maryland, and so I have nothing but great memories. It's Barry Trotz was our head coach. Barry was actually the Western scout when I got drafted by the Caps, so I owe him a lot of credit for getting me to Washington. And so Barry and I have a long outstanding relationship, going all the way back to '88, and Sean Simson, who was I think we had like three, four goalies, Jim Redneck. We all became close friends. It was just it was a fun time. And when you play in the American League, it's obviously a lot less pressure than when you're in the NHL. So you can enjoy yourself a little bit more and play guilty, I guess is a term we use, which I wouldn't recommend nowadays. But yeah, it was just a fun time. It was a great era, the early '90s, and yeah, I had a lot of great memories of Baltimore. I went to, when Camden Yards was built. I think I was there for one of the first couple games. I was there when
That's awesome.
when Cal Ripken tied the record.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so a lot of great memories of Baltimore.
What was it like, transitioning into the Caps? I mean, do you remember your first game, just sort of those first couple moments, what's going through your head during that time?
So I made the Caps out of the first training camp as a 19-year-old after that trip to Russia. I think going into that camp, I had no illusion of being with Washington. I thought for sure I was going back to my junior team. And so I went in just to make an impression and not put any pressure on myself. And as a result, I played great hockey. I didn't think about it. And then, I got called into David Poyle's office and told me that I'd made the team out of camp. And then I think reality hit. And then I started thinking too much. I got my first start in Hartford. It was like the third or fourth game of the year. And we were down, I want to say 3-0, 3-1 after the first period. But I look back and I seen I didn't let any bad goals in. I wouldn't say it was a great game, but I wouldn't say it was a bad game. It's probably an average game. So I felt okay about it. We lost 4-1. I mean, I got some praise from our coaches and some of my teammates, and so it was good just to get that first game out of the way. And then, short time later, about 10 days later, I got the start in Toronto, and it was on Hockey Night in Canada. And I'd lived in Toronto at some point in my childhood, and I knew what kind of big deal the Leafs were. I knew what kind of big deal Hockey Night in Canada was. And then I think I just got just overwhelmed. And I mean, I started out the game great. I think halfway through the game, we were at 4-1. I was playing well. And I don't know if a switch went off in my head and thought, okay, I've got this game figured out. This is, I meant to play in the NHL. This is easy. Because by the end of the third period, we lost the game 8-4. And 2 days later, I got sent back to junior. So, but it was, for me, it was a reality check. I had a long ways to go mentally. I mean, physically, I was there. I was a big guy. I was in good shape. But mentally, I had a long ways to go. And I don't think it was probably for another 4 or 5 years before I got my next start. So it was obviously an honor to make the team right out of camp, play a couple games, but then it was a little bit frustrating. It took me another 4 or 5 years to get another start.
How'd you stay motivated? Just reminding yourself each day to put one foot in front of the other in a situation like that. It's something that we've talked with other goalies about, but I'm just curious how you were able to do it sort of at that time.
I mean, I knew I had some growing up to do, and I knew I had some, I had to work on my mental toughness. I knew I could be better. I knew my ability. I knew my work ethic. I knew my perseverance. Again, I was fortunate that I was with an organization that was patient with me. I was fortunate that we weren't in the salary cap era. And there was times where it was very frustrating. I remember when Jim Carey came up and Ace had played fantastic in the American League and came up and was playing really good. And I just kept saying to myself, you're every bit as good as he is. He's got something figured out that he was a very laid back guy. Things didn't faze him. I was more of an emotional guy. I wore it on my sleeve. It's probably why I wrecked the trainer's stick budget every year. But at the same time, I looked at Ace's work ethic, and I looked at just some things, and I said, okay, just be patient, keep working, and it'll pay off for you. And it didn't necessarily pay off for me when Ace or Jim Carey was there, but it paid off for me the next year because, you know, Jim got traded at the end of that year. We got Billy Ranford, Adam Oates, and Rick Tocchet. And so, you know, I was reinvigorated. You know, here's a new goalie that, even though he's a veteran, he's won some Stanley Cups. He was near the end of his career. So I was invigorated to, you know, to come into camp. We just hired Dave Pryor as a goalie coach, who I had worked with before with the national team in Germany. So there was a comfort level for me now. And when Billy came in, we hit it off. I mean, I don't think there's a partner out there that could say that I never got along with him. Because I always believed in treating people the same way you want to be treated. And, you know, it is a competition. You can do, like I said earlier in the interview, you go out and do the best you can. And then the decision is obviously up to the coach. So anyway, great training camp. Billy had a good training camp too. And that first game, the start of the season, he got the nod. We're in Toronto again. And I remember he took a shot in the groin area and couldn't finish the period. And so I went in. I think we were leading 5-0. Toronto was brutal back then, and we were actually an up and coming team. And we were up 5-0. And I mean, this is where I was mentally at the time, because Toronto had never been good to me. I got blown out the one game. The second game I played in Toronto, I dislocated my kneecap. So it was not a good building for me. So we're up 5-0. I go in the period thinking, all right, here's your opportunity. Here's your opportunity. You know, what do? I go in there going, don't blow this game. Don't blow this game. Don't blow this game. And it's just the wrong mindset to have as a goalie. And I think once I got that first shot on me, and it was a big save, I think I just settled down. And then my mind switched and I said, here's your opportunity. You know, you've had plenty down the road. You didn't take the ball and run with it. Where you're at now, the organization where it's at now, take the ball and run with it. And then that's the year we ended up going to the Stanley Cup Finals. So, you know, I tell all the young guys that I work with now in the organization, I just, you know, perseverance is huge. Self-confidence is huge. Self-belief is huge. You know, the game of hockey, there's always going to be setbacks. And it's how, you know, you keep your mountains low and your valleys high. You never get too excited when things are going good, and you never get too down when things are going bad. You're not always playing as great as you think you are when you're winning, and you're definitely not playing as bad as you think you are when you're losing. You know, it just comes with the position. You're a hero when you win, and you're a zero when you lose. And so, you know, I learned a lot in those 7 years leading up to finally becoming a number one guy, and I finally applied myself to it. And then, you know, I had another 7-8 years as a number one, and a great run for the rest of my career.
Talked about that cup final run briefly, and obviously there's no secret you were a huge reason for why the Caps got so far that year. Just insane numbers in the playoffs that year. But I'm curious what you thought of sort of the rest of the team that year, and what some of the other big successes from that group were. And additionally, if you could sort of just take us into the mindset in that locker room that year, what was kind of going through everybody's head?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I had a great run, but I mean, there's so many other contributing factors. You know, that first round series against Boston, we were up 3-1, and all we read about in the paper, all we listened to on TV, because there wasn't social media back then, was, you know, and Tony Kornheiser was the worst at that with the Washington Post. You know, it wasn't how great we were playing and you know, how we're doing as a team. And it was all about, here we go again. Caps are up 3-1. Are they going to choke again? And that's all that was talked about. And then we lost game 5. And then that just kind of, it kept building up. And you know, I give Ron Wilson credit that year, because he came out and we basically we addressed the elephant in the room in our pregame meeting before game 6. And he basically challenged us all to rise to the occasion, and you know, because we're a different team. We're not the Caps of the past. And anyway, we rallied as a group, and we ended up eliminating Boston. And I think a lot like the Caps in 2018, when they finally beat Pittsburgh, it just took a tremendous amount of weight off our shoulders. And we just, you know, we felt, I wouldn't say invincible, But things were starting to fall in place for us. All the top 3 teams in our conference that year had gotten upset in the first round. So instead of playing Jersey or Philly, trying to think who else. I think who else got it. But anyway, Buffalo upset Jersey, Ottawa, I think, upset Philly, or the opposite way around. So we ended up getting Ottawa in the second round. And we played great against Ottawa all year. And we steamrolled through them. And then we got Buffalo in the conference finals. And we had success. We had great season series against them. And we were able to get through there. But I mean, we had a mix of talent, we had a mix of youth, veterans, tough guys, skill guys, smart asses, cerebral guys, guys that had their own language, like Esatikinen. I mean, it was just a great locker room. And it was the first year where Ron Wilson came in, so it was a breath of fresh air as far as, new message from a coach. George McPhee's first year, GM. And so it just didn't feel like that same aura around the franchise. And we just moved into, which was MCI Center now, Capital One Arena. So it was a new facility. It just, everything felt new, felt like a breath of fresh air. And, the town just hopped on board and we just rode the momentum. Unfortunately, we ran into a juggernaut against the Red Wings. We lost 4 straight, but the series I thought was a lot closer than 4 straight. Had we won, in my mind, had we won game 2, definitely would have been a different series. Not saying that we would have won, but we could have taken a lot further. But yeah, we had a lot of great personalities. We had Brendan Witt, we had Joe Ricci, Craig Berube, Dale Hunter, Mark Tenorti, Peter Bondra, Adam Oates, Joey Juneau. We brought in Esatikinen and Brian Bellows. We had Sergei Gonchar, a young guy, Ken Klee. I mean, it was just a great mix. And there's reasons why teams like that go to the finals. When you gel as a unit, you care for each other and you play for each other. It just, the sky's the limit. And that's what it was back then in 89 or in 98.
Talk a little bit about, you mentioned smart asses. Who were some of the real big personalities on that team?
Well, I'd say Joe Ricci was the crown. Yeah, he wore the crown for that. Dale Hunter was right up there. Chris Simon, Craig Berube, myself. I got in there a little bit. Forgot to mention Phil Housley, Hall of Famer. He was on our team too. Not a bad player. I would say 50% of our team were smart asses. And I think that's what made it so enjoyable. We could banter with each other and not take it personal. And we had practical jokers. I mean, we had, let's see. So Keith Jones,
Jonesy
got traded before we went. But so Jonesy was probably the biggest smartass of them all. And Callie Johansson, I forgot to mention Callie too. But anyway, so Callie and Dale, Jonesy was getting on their nerves. So Callie ordered this luftefish from Sweden. And if you've ever had luftefish or smelled luftefish, it is the worst smelling thing in the world. So he ordered it direct from Sweden. And what he did is the trainer ended up getting the keys to Jonesy's car during a practice and took the fish and didn't just put it under like a floor mat. Like they actually took parts of the car off, folded the actual flooring up, stuck the fish in, riveted everything back. And I mean, this is probably springtime, starting to warm up in DC. It gets pretty sticky there. For about 7 days, Jonesy had no idea what was going on with it. Brought it into the service center. He got it detailed. I mean, it just took forever, to the point where Huntsy and Jonesy and Callie just said, "Okay, here's what happened." And so they pulled the fish out. But anyway, that turned into coming home from a road trip, and we would always park at Piney Orchard where our practice rink was, and Dale had a Ford pickup, and so Jonesy had gotten in touch with Jimmy Wiseman, who was our team security guy, and had Jimmy put Dale's truck up on blocks. But put it up on blocks where you could barely fit a piece of paper under the tire in the asphalt. So when you got off the bus, you couldn't tell. So we all get in our cars and we're pulling away and we kind of stop and we look over our shoulder and all we see is Huntsy just revving the engine, the wheels just spinning like this. And he was there, I guess, for about an hour and a half after trying to get the blocks out and get the car taken away.
That's amazing.
There was this one other story I'll tell about Huntsy. So his last year, he told us at the beginning of the year that he had this one tweed blazer, and that was all he was going to wear. For all our road trips, all our home games, it was the only jacket he was going to wear. So by the end of the season, we're getting ready to go in the playoffs, and so we're giddy in the bus, and Dale's saying some smart ass remark. Well, we're coming off the bus. I grab him by his arms, and I just kind of wanted to shake him a little bit, and because the material was so worn down, I actually the material disintegrated, and his sleeve just literally pulled off his jacket. So the whole team's cheering. They're like, thank God we're not going to see that jacket anymore. 2 days later, we come to our home game. Guess what he's wearing when he walks in the door? He's got the same jacket. He had his mother-in-law sew up the sleeve. And not only that, opened up his jacket and goes, look, boys, Hugo Boss. He went into one of the other guys' jackets and trimmed out the
Oh my gosh.
inside and had his mother-in-law back on. But that's the kind of team we had. It was just a bunch of oddballs that we just got along.
I'm curious, you played, like you just mentioned, the cup final era, and then you got the Yager era, and then you even saw like a young Ovechkin. How, I guess the difference between like that cup final years and then maybe like the quote unquote Yager era, like what was the difference in the teams? Like, did the dynamic ever change? Did like the team get, a little more serious, like, or less jokes as time went on? Like how'd the whole team dynamic change?
Initially it was, we were all excited when we got Yogs. I mean, we played against him and he was our nemesis for the longest time. So when we got him, we were excited. We didn't know anything about him. Obviously he was a different guy back then, as opposed to the guy that he is now. I mean, now I think he just finished playing last year. He still might be playing this year for his Czech Republic, so, but he for whatever reason, it just clicked and he started taking things more serious his second time in the NHL. But back then he was the big dog, wouldn't always compete the hardest in practice, would always complain about drills. He was just an up and down emotional guy. But having said that, probably our second, third year having him, maybe second year, we brought in Robert Lang. And we ended up battling with Tampa for the division lead that year. They ended up beating us by 1 point. And I mean, I would argue we had just as good a team, maybe if not better, than we had in '89. We played Tampa in the first round, and we went in, shut them out game one, beat them 5-1 game two or something like that. I mean, totally had them on their heels. Organization had never gone past the first round. So, in their mind, they were probably figuring, okay, this is going to be an early exit. And then I don't want to necessarily put it all on coaching, but we had a relatively young guy in Bruce Cassidy that year. And we got home and all of a sudden we felt like we needed to match lines and we lost a tough one in game 3 in double overtime. I think, or in overtime, they got a 5-on-3 power play in overtime, some questionable calls. So they win game 3. They're feeling good about themselves. They get back into it. Game 4, I didn't play well. Team didn't play well. Game 5, we go down. It's a good hockey game, 2-2. Late in the third, I go out to play the puck and I rim it around the boards. And my follow through is about, thigh high. But Marty St. Louis, who's, 4'5" at the best of times, was cutting the net, and on my follow through, I clipped him. But he was literally 2 feet off the ice. I mean, my stick wasn't past my thigh. It gave me a high sticking penalty for it. So now,
oh my God,
we're killing a penalty. They score. They make it 3-2. They win game 5, 3-2. We come back home on Easter. We're up 1-0 with about 2 minutes to go. They get a lucky goal, bounces off one of our players right over to Dave Anderchuk, who's by himself, wide open net, puts it in, ties it up. And then we lose in triple overtime that year. So we lost 4-2. But I mean, we had Trevor Linden, Adam Oates, Jeff Halpern. We still had Bondra, Gonchar, Witt. God, I'm trying to remember all the guys that we had back then. Robert Lang. We had a good hockey team. And, had we gotten past Tampa, who knows? I mean, there were a lot of good teams that year. Jersey, bounced Tampa out that next round. But, with the Yager era, it was up and down. It's probably more down than up, but that one run, that 1 year, that was a good year. And unfortunately, we didn't make it happen. And then, the next year they dismantled everything and everybody got traded. And so we still had a good group of guys. I wouldn't necessarily say we were as tight as that 89 team, 98 team. But we still had a good group of players and a good group of guys.
What was the lockout experience like for you? You go over to Germany. You play in Berlin, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
What was that whole experience like? I mean, obviously, I'm sure you're not thrilled about not playing in the NHL, but did you enjoy the time overseas?
Yeah, the lockout sucked. I mean, that was brutal. That was the year I probably would have earned the most money in my career and didn't get, one penny from it. But having said that, I decided I gave it until the new year, thinking that there was no way we're going to miss a whole season and that, we'll start sometime in January. Well, that didn't happen. And I was 34 at the time. So I needed to play. I mean, I knew that if I took a whole year off, it was going to set me back. And so I needed to play. And I ended up getting in touch with Stefan Ustorf, who was a former teammate of mine in Washington, who was playing for Berlin. And they needed a goalie. They had a young guy that they had a good team. They had a young guy that, could be good, but they didn't want to have him going into the playoffs by himself. So I ended up going over and playing, I can't remember, 10 games maybe before the playoffs. And I remember in round one, I ended up hurting my knee, which I had to have surgery for when I got back to Washington. But we ended up winning the championship that year. I felt like I had a bit of an influence on the young goalie there, Oliver Jonas. And we had probably 7 or 8 Canadians on the team. Berlin is a world-class city. I'd been to a lot of places in Germany, obviously with my family living in a lot of the parts, but I'd never been to Berlin. And so the history of it, and I was just over there by myself. My family had stayed back in the US. So on my off days, I would wander around and do some sightseeing and touring. And the DEL, the German league, is for European hockey is as close to North American as it gets. I mean, it's physical. Half the teams are usually made up from guys that played in North America. So English is prevalent there. And we played in some great cities, great buildings. And that gave me an opportunity to continue playing so that I would be somewhat sharp going into training camp the next season. But the lockout itself sucked. That was brutal.
Figured that much. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a consensus answer, I feel like, for everyone that we've talked to. But you mentioned that, you come into training camp sharp after playing in Berlin. And obviously, I believe that year after the lockout, that was the rookie season for Ovechkin, kind of a new look Caps. They have a new era coming. What was the whole feel of that season? I mean, I know the team didn't exactly do well standings wise, but just, you're talking about a legend now in Ovechkin, and he was a rookie back then. What was the aura of that year?
So I met Ovi actually while I was in Germany. I remember we were in Cologne, and it might have been the first game I played for Berlin, and he was there. Like an under 20 Russian team was there playing an exhibition game. So I got to meet him there. And my first impressions were, this kid's unbelievable. I mean, he was as, gregarious. His English wasn't really good, but he was as gregarious as he is now. But again, I hadn't seen him play, and there was a first overall pick, and we're excited that he's coming. And so, there was a buzz in town, that next training camp. And then the first time you go on the ice with him, you're like, wow, this kid is dynamite. And what I was really impressed with was that he was not, most Europeans, especially Russians, they come in, they're a little leery. It takes a while for them to trust people. But Ovi came in right away, wanted to be a part of the group, wanted to room with a North American guy so he could learn English and learn the culture right away. Was always a part of the team. And then when you saw him play, and you saw him just play with enthusiasm and just like this youthful, it was infectious to the team. And because we'd come off, well, even the year before the lockout, we had a terrible year. Then we had the lockout, and so it just wasn't a good vibe coming back. I mean, obviously we were excited after missing a year to be playing again, but we knew that it was going to be a couple of tough years with the lineup that we had and how young we were. But then you see Ovi, and now there's a little bit of optimism. You're starting to like, wow, this is, we drafted Nick Backstrom, we Mike Green coming in. We had a lot of youth coming in, and at the time I was like, I'm so thankful I didn't ask for a trade. I mean, I see where this organization's going now, and I'm excited, and I just hope my body can hold up until we finally, get to the culmination of being relevant again. And unfortunately that didn't happen, but yeah, always you could tell this kid was special. I didn't think back then he was going to continue to do what he's doing at his age now, but I knew he was going to be, without even having to see him play 10 games. I think after he scored that goal in Arizona, the one where he was on his back, I'm like, this kid's going to the Hall of Fame.
Yep, sounds about right.
Minimize that.
One of the other guys, young guys on that team who, in my opinion, one of the best shots I've ever seen. And I don't know if you could back me up on this, is Alex Semin. What was he like as a teammate?
I wasn't a big fan of Alex Semin as far as the teammate goes. He was the exact opposite of Ovi. Didn't really want to learn the language. He was aloof. Didn't really want to interact with his teammates. But I would arguably say that he was more talented than Ovi. Ovi was full of heart, determination. I think Alex Semin was just playing on pure skill. As far as a shot goes, I mean, this guy, one of the best snapshots I've ever seen. And it's wild because he always had his hands close on the stick. And that when they're like this, there's not a lot of leverage on that bottom hand, so you don't get a lot of power. Obviously the further down you go, the more torque you get on your stick. But his forearms, I mean, I'm 6'3", well, back then I was 230. I had fairly big forearms, but this kid's wrists, I mean, I could barely and I got big hands, I could barely put my fingers around his wrist. So he had a set of forearms and hands on him, and he could just change the stick angle without moving the hands on his stick. And you just couldn't pick up the release. He was talented. He's probably the most disappointed teammate I've had. When you see the talent that he had, and yes, he's still ranked in all-time goal scoring for us. He still put up numbers. But if he'd have shown any sort of heart like Ovi had, I mean, we probably would have made Malkin and Crosby look like, fourth liners. I mean, those two are a dynamic duo, but having Alex and Alex, if Semin had the drive and the ticker that Ovi had, I mean, it could have been lethal.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things I want to ask you, just speaking about after that lockout year, and this just came to me, they changed all the rules. I remember that year they cracked down on penalties. They implemented the trapezoid, I believe, for the goaltenders, if I'm not mistaken. Were people, or were your teammates, or just the league in general, were they like, what the hell is this? Like, how long did the adjustment period take? They took away like the 2-line pass. They changed the offside rule. Like, what was all that like?
They took away the hooking and holding, which I thought was fantastic for the game. Made the game faster. I think everything they did was right. Other than the trapezoid, and that was basically the Marty Brodeur.
Yeah.
I think Bobby Clark from Philly was the one that was really pushing for that. Because goalies are really starting to handle the puck a lot better. But back then, before they put the touch offside or touch icing in, or non-touch icing in, it was a great way for goalies to protect the defenseman. They'd go out and play the puck, and the D-man didn't have to worry about getting killed by the hard forechecking forward. You put that trapezoid in, now it really hinders the goalie on helping the D, and I think, not that there's a study out on it, but I'd be curious to see how many more concussions were incurred because of the goalie not being able to play the puck and the D-man just getting absolutely hammered. Fortunately, they put in the no touch icing now, which I think is great because the game has gotten so fast. But it was adjustment. It was a big time adjustment. The other adjustment we had to make was a shootout. They implemented that as well, and I'd experienced that a little bit in Germany. I mean, in Europe, they have that all the time. But the biggest thing in Europe is you get rewarded for a regulation win. If you win in regulation, you get 3 points. And I think that's where the NHL missed their mark with this, is that they should have put more emphasis on teams winning in regulation, as opposed to getting the same amount of points if you win in a shootout as you do in regulation. So, but yeah, so I think everything they did was for the betterment of the game, and as a result, it's a great game to watch now. Not that it wasn't back then, but the speed and the talent and the skill, it's off the charts.
No, we've kept you for a while, so we'll try to wrap up soon. I just have a couple more questions here. One, I definitely want to hear about sort of what your experience has been more recently in the last couple of years as a coach with the Caps, and sort of how you have transitioned into that role, and then of course how your 2018 experience was as a coach with the team too.
Yeah, so it's no secret I left on bad terms with the team back in 2008, and I signed 1 year in Tampa. In hindsight, I probably should have just retired as a Cap, but with the way things ended, I didn't. As an athlete, you have an ego, and you think you can still perform at a high level, and I didn't want my career to end on that note. So when Tampa called and offered me the 1 year deal, I took it. And from a personal standpoint, it was probably the best decision I made with my family, because things away from the rink were great. I mean, middle of January, you're coming out of the rink at 75 degrees, take the kids to the beach, and Disney World was right there, and so from that aspect, it was fantastic. But the hockey, there was a lot of turmoil there too, and my body was beaten up the year before in Wash. I tore a labrum in my hip, and I had to use all summer to recover from that. And then 8 games into the season in Tampa, I tore my biceps tendon. I ended up getting traded at the deadline to the Leafs in a salary swap. I didn't even leave Tampa. I actually hosted the year-end party for the Lightning that year, even though I was spent a total of half a day in Toronto just to go get medically cleared. And at that point, I told myself, I had enough. It's my body's way of saying it's over. And so I retired in 2009, and then I just took 2 years off. We just stayed in Tampa, and we enjoyed the 2 years. And the one thing every ex-athlete will tell you, and every wife will tell you, that it's a huge adjustment that first year after you retire. Moms have a certain way of parenting. Moms have a certain schedule. Moms have a certain amount of time off from their husbands, and then all of a sudden the husband's there 24/7, thinking he knows how to parent and what to do, and so needless to say, there was a lot of headbutting going on, and then it got to a point where, like, okay, maybe I need to go back and work and get out of the house a little bit. So then in 2011, I got in touch with, or Dave Pryor got in touch with me and knew that I wanted to get back into it. And they offered me the associate goaltending job, which meant that I'd go down in Hershey and South Carolina and work with our prospects down there. And then I did that for 2-3 years, and then got hired on as the full-time guy up in Washington with Adam Oates. And but but the role had changed at that point. So I moved up to DC. My family had stayed in Florida. I moved up to DC. And when I was working with Dave, it was always Dave would come in if my game needed to be fixed, work on my game for 5-6 days, stick around for another 4 days, make sure everything's on track. And then he would leave me and go watch junior or go down to the minors. And so he wasn't living in DC. But just when I started taking that role on, the role had changed. Oatsy wanted me there full time. He wanted us to go on the ice every day with the goalies. And so for me, that wasn't what I had envisioned. I mean, I still had 3 young kids down in Florida, and I didn't nearly get back as much as I wanted to. So, you know, the end of that year, Oatsy got fired, and Barry came in, and you know, I knew it's not what I wanted to do anymore. I didn't want to be a full-time guy while I still had a young family, and so I went to Mac and Brian McClellan and talked to him about this player development position, where not so much as skill development as it is teaching these kids how to be pros. Because, you know, I knew firsthand when I came from junior, you know, you're basically thrown to the wolves. You're on your own. You're coming from an environment where you're living with a family, you're getting your laundry done, you're getting your meals done, you don't have bills to worry about. You just got to be at the rink. You're always getting told what to do. Well, when you turn pro, you've got to find your place. You've got to, you know, you've got to set up all this stuff. You got to pay bills, grocery shopping. You know, you got a ton of money from signing bonus, so you've got money management that you got to deal with. You've got time management you got to deal with, because you got so much free time now. You only got to be at the rink 3 hours. And so I pitched this to Mac about coming in and trying to help these kids adjust, and, you know, helping them get on a routine. You know, so that the biggest thing for a pro is consistency. That's all coaches want out of the players, is consistency. And like I said earlier, you know, keep the mountains low and the valleys high. That's consistent. You don't want a player that's up here and then down here, and the coach doesn't know what he's getting from a game to game basis. So that was my job, was to go in there and work with these guys on making them become consistent quickly, which is very hard to do for a first year player. I mean, it's such a big jump going from junior college European hockey to the American League. It's less of a jump when you go from the American League to the NHL. And so that players nowadays need somebody there to kind of help guide them and let them know that, you know, this is what you got to expect. Everybody that's come up this way has gone through the same thing, so don't feel out of place. And so it's something that's evolved for me. It keeps me, instead of just working with the 2 guys and the goaltenders, I get to work with all our prospects. So instead of 2 guys, I'm working with 15 guys, and that's, you know, with South Carolina and Hershey. And you know, when we won in 2018, I had 6 guys that were on that playoff roster that I'd worked with the year before in Hershey. So those are the gratifying things when you have those kids, when you get them young, and then all of a sudden, you know, they're holding up the Stanley Cup. I mean, that's worth it.
Absolutely. One last thing I wanted to ask you about is, you know, I was born in '94. You were my favorite Caps player growing up. The mask, the most iconic goalie mask, in my opinion, in NHL history. Where did that all come from, and how did that design get put together?
So it was probably my 3rd year pro. I got loaned out to Rochester, which is another long story. But I got loaned out to Rochester. So I was in the Buffalo Sabres organization. And I endeared myself to the fans. You know, like I told you guys earlier, I wore my emotions on my sleeve. And, you know, this is the first time the Rochester fans had seen me. And, you know, here's this 6'3", 230-pound goalie, which, you know, back then was really big, breaking a stick over the post or slashing somebody or punching somebody in the face. And I remember coming to the rink one day, and this fan had a sign that nobody beats Godzilla. And then it said what was my number there? 31. And so I'm like, that's pretty cool. And then I shortened it to Zilla. because I didn't want to be sacrilegious. And then the next year I started coming up with, because I actually had a pretty cool mask at the time. I had Uncle Sam on the front pointing and the stars on the side. So for me,
That's
that
awesome.
was a really cool mask at the time. But then we went to that color change where we went to the copper and the blue and the with the postage stamp eagle. And so I started working on the new design the next year. Needless to say, the first couple weren't great. I remember one the Godzilla looked like Barney, the kid dinosaur. And no joke, we're in Portland, and that's where Washington's farm team was for that after we left Baltimore. It was our first year in Portland, and I came out for warm up, and I'm getting ready to take some shots, and all of a sudden I hear, "I love you, you love me." One of the guys that talked to the PA guy and had him play that song in warm up. So after that game, that mask was done. It was probably, I don't know, probably took another 2 or 3 masks before I finally got the one that I ended up wearing. But yeah, it's like nobody beats Godzilla, and so that just kind of stuck with me.
That's awesome.
It's a great story. I have one last little kind of memory to share with you before we let you go. I have no idea if you remember any of this, but sitting in my mom's house still to this day in Baltimore is this little framed photo on top of her sort of dining room mantle. And I'll try to show you through here. It's a picture of you and me and my older sister as little kids. And we got to try on your mask, and that was pretty cool. Definitely I'll never forget that one. And then this one I actually had no recollection of, but my sister sent it to me the other day. It was from like a reading is cool campaign that the Caps must have done. Yep. And it's like a whole group photo of you, and then that's my big sister in the front there at the bottom, and some sort of weird rendition of Slapshot back there. But
I remember that campaign. I think I did it for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, just some fun memories there. But yeah, we still have those photos. I just thought that was funny.
Oh, that's cool.
Curious what memories you had of those at all. But
yeah, no, I remember I was big into giving back and getting involved in charities and anything to do with kids. And so yeah, that was the Reading is Cool campaign was pretty good. I remember we did something with Sports Illustrated too, that kids had a chance to design my mask, and it was a Sports Illustrated for kids, and the winner would get their drawing put on the front of the cover, and so no, it was. I remember a lot of those things back then.
I still haven't heard about that, by the way. Do you know when they're going to announce who won?
They might announce the winner before you were born.
I do remember. I remember pulling that piece out of the magazine and coloring my design and mailing it in.
That's funny.
Yeah, I think I have a copy of it somewhere. I think it's in the storage unit with a lot of my stuff. But yeah, no, that stuff was. I think it's important to do for athletes or anybody of prominence that you have a platform where you can make a difference or you can help out, and yeah, I really enjoyed doing that stuff. And obviously,
awesome.
It has an effect because you remember it.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's not for nothing. Yeah, we just want to thank you again for all your time. If there's anything you want to share with our listeners before you go, you're more than welcome to. I know you've got a lot of stuff going on in your own life, so.
Yeah, no, I'm actually pretty proud to see you're following your dad's footsteps. I'm a big fan of your dad, and Dad and I had a pretty good relationship, and he was always one I could, as athletes, we don't always have a great relationship with the press, media, but Mike was one of the rare guys you could trust, and so I'm proud to see you kind of following his footsteps.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Means a lot.
Alrighty, well, Olie, thank you so much once again. We really, really appreciate the time.
Oh, anytime, guys. Feel free down the road. You want to talk about something else? Feel free to give me a call.
We would just want to take another opportunity to say a huge thanks to Olie for hopping on with us. That is top 3 all time for me. That was just so cool. I grew up idolizing that guy, watching that guy, wanting to be that guy. So that was just amazing.
Yeah, can't say enough good things about him. He was my first Caps jersey I ever had as a kid, was the black Capitol Dome Olie the goalie jersey. So yeah, huge thank you to him, and hopefully many more exciting interviews to come upcoming.
Yeah, definitely. You know what else is exciting?
You tell me. I have
Kane
no idea.
footwear.
Oh, I had no idea.
If you haven't heard, yeah, Kane footwear is pretty exciting because they just released a new shoe that they collabed with Hillary Knight on. So I think everyone on this podcast was in love with her at some point in their lives. So
Probably accurate.
yeah, go buy the shoe. They're fantastic. Kane footwear is changing the game by providing a unique shoe focused on recovery while being made from sustainable materials. The Kane Revive is made with bounce back foam created from Brazilian sugarcane, a renewable resource. Sugarcane helps reduce greenhouse gases by capturing CO2 as it grows. Kane's unique bounce back foam provides the ideal balance of cushioning and support to help the body renew. Head to the link in our bio today to grab a pair of the most comfortable shoes you will ever own.
I echo that. I wear them to the bar now. Matt, good tip, by the way. This is for anybody out there who's bought a pair and you wear them out, you get them dirty. I'm small brained and Mac is big brained. And he basically pointed out to me that they are water resistant. So you can literally hose them down, scrub them with soap. You do whatever you got to do to clean those bad boys up.
So when you wear them, you are waterproof.
Exactly. I actually just wore them on over the weekend. I was at a friend's bachelor weekend party. It was a fishing ordeal, and wore the Canes. I was also decked out in brackish UV gear. So yeah, all the EB sponsors were keeping me safe out there on the water. It was pretty great. Caught some fish too.
It looked like a blast. I mean, how was the haul?
So there was 2 boats. There was 5 of us on each boat. Not including like the captains. And it's funny, we split up into the one group that wanted to take it really seriously. And that was like, that had the boat with the bachelor on it. And then the other boat was like branded as the party boat. Like, if we catch some fish, that's cool, but we're just going to like
drink beer on the boat.
Yeah.
And the party boat, which was my boat, caught 7
Shocker.
fish. And the serious boat caught 4. So
Party boat always wins.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
I myself caught 1 lake trout. But yeah, it was all lake trout and king salmon that we were catching.
Nice.
It's not bad company.
That was good stuff.
Yeah, the snaps looks great on that. I definitely need to do like a fit. Was that in Wisconsin, or did you guys go like somewhere else?
Nope. So one of our buddies has a beach house in like his family beach house is in South Haven, Michigan, which is a great little town. In if you've never been there, it's a cool little beach town. Tons to do, ton of fun little like area downtown, but also you're right on the lake. Tons of hiking, swimming, fishing, boating to do. It was a blast of a weekend. So
Yeah, it looked it.
About 4 hours away from here.
Nice.
Very jealous indeed. Well, we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of the episode. We're going to go recap all the free agency. I do want to point out, we're going to separate the Capitals and the Penguins transactions from the rest of them. You know why. You've been listening long enough at this point, probably. So let's get started, and not to pick on Jackson so soon in the episode, but the Chicago Blackhawks have officially traded Alex DeBrincat to the Ottawa Senators. They traded DeBrincat for Ottawa's 1st and 2nd round picks in this year's draft. The picks have already gone, and a 3rd round pick in the 2024 draft. Wow. Jackson, I got to hear your thoughts on this before anybody else chimes in.
Making me rip off the Band-Aid already. I was kind of hoping this would be like shoved into like the end as like a quick thing, but I guess with the amount of what everything was, I guess it had to be first. But
Yeah.
Without knowing the prospects that we got in this trade very well, I absolutely effing hate this trade so much.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing if like they're getting rid of, like we'll talk about later, Dylan Strome, because he's been solid but inconsistent. This guy is 24 years old and just scored 40 goals.
Yeah.
And by the time this Hawks team will be good again and actually contending, hopefully 3 or 4 years down the line, he's going to be 28, 29 years old, right in the middle of his prime, with another 3 or 4 years of his prime left.
Yeah.
So it's we should have gotten a lot more. I would have loved, like, I get without a first round pick, it kind of is what it was. Getting number 7 was insane, but I literally just, my heart sank when I saw that. And I'm like, I hate Kyle Davidson so goddamn much. So
what's the consensus opinion in the Chicago sports world? Like, are there many people talking about it?
Oh yeah, I've been kind of deeper into Blackhawks Twitter and some of the people I know from other Twitters that are also Blackhawks fans. And while they, at this point, they understand it somewhat, they are still mighty. They're happy with the draft, like who we got, but they absolutely hate that it had to come at the cost of DeBrincat and Kirby Doc.
I think this is just one of those deals where it's like, if you're a Hawks fan, you're going to hate it until that prospect is a stud.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Or even just makes the league so you can kind of
True.
Judge it up. But yeah. And then the Blackhawks, obviously they trade Kirby Doc to the Montreal Canadiens, which is honestly like kind of a really good trade for the Habs. If you want my honest opinion, they might be sneaky this year. I've shit on them ever since this podcast has existed. I'm slowly maybe buying it. Maybe.
If Carey Price can find his game, then yeah,
that's
possible.
Obviously the big X factor here.
The Petrie loss is big for them, but we'll touch on that obviously later.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so now we're going to move on to some signings. The LA Kings acquired Kevin Fiala from the Minnesota Wild and then turned around and signed him to a 7-year, $55 million deal. Fiala's coming off a career year with the Wild. What do you guys think about this one? You want to say it's a thumbs up or a thumbs down, or as we'll use on this podcast, we'll dump and change for bad signing, and we'll go with wheeling for a good signing.
Wheels all day.
Yeah, I'm kind of in agreement. Nick, what do you think?
I think, yeah, it's kind of a Minnesota contract in LA.
Yeah,
yes, that's a very good way of putting it.
Yeah. So that's the only
it's
thing
too
that,
long for sure, but
yes. And we all know that these deals, it's like the first 4 is for the team, the last 3 is for the player.
yeah.
Yeah, and there's always probably, I mean, I don't know the specifics of the contract, but people just sign 7-year deals, and by year 6, they factor in the buyout, and it's
right.
Just crazy.
And 7 years from now, the Kings could add 2 more Stanley Cups with Turcotte, Kaliev, Byfield, all these guys. Like, they are on the up and up for sure.
Jackson, any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of it for a couple of reasons. One, my first is a completely biased reason, in the fact that Kevin Fiala is no longer in the division against the Blackhawks anymore. So fuck Minnesota. Yeah. But I also like this. Like you said, I think this is good. This is a good building piece. Continue to build piece for the Kings. You just, when you're in the middle of a rebuild and you make that first playoff series and you play really well, and you get that first big piece, like I'll go back to Hawks getting Marian Hossa. That's kind of, I don't know if Fiala is going to be as good as Marian Hossa was, but that's kind of the vibes I'm getting from this.
Off the ice, that dude in LA.
Yeah, that's
holy shit.
Well, now that Sagan's taken off the dating market, we got new bat signals that'll be flipped up. But yeah, that's
God.
Neither here nor there. Staying on the topic of the Minnesota Wild, they re-signed goaltender Marc-Andre Fleury to a 2-year, $7 million deal. There was a lot of speculation about Fleury potentially going back to the Pens. There was talks about maybe the Caps trying to make another pitch after the trade deadline pitch failed. What do you guys think of this deal for Minnesota?
I think it's solid. 2 years makes sense. Obviously, I think even 1 would have been fine, but like we said before, there's a little bit built in there for the player. I think 2 years makes sense for MAF and for the Wild.
They didn't have a choice either. I mean, they dealt Talbot. This is your guy. The goalie market was essentially dried up after Kemper was off the table. So, you got to stick with your guy.
Yeah, they doubled down. They committed to it. So they're stuck with it now. They're going to lean into it. And I think it's, it shouldn't be a bad call. I think it'll work out well for them.
They did the opposite of what Vegas did.
Quite literally, yes. Yeah, they shipped Cam Talbot up to Ottawa. God knows. That team might be sneaky this year. Lot of rumors about how they stack up against the Leafs in terms of offense. I don't know if I agree with that just yet. Jackson, you got any final thoughts on the deal?
Yeah, no, I think 3.5 million for a guy who's still going to be at the very least an above average tendy is going to be good for Minnesota. For them, it's really going to come down to the fact of who their backup is at this point and how he's going to play when Fleury does have to sit. But nothing wrong if you keep a guy at 3.5 AAV. So
yeah, for sure. The Canucks, they re-signed Brock Besser to a 3-year deal just shy of $20 million. The Kings, they re-signed Adrian Kempe to a 4-year, $22 million deal. So LA's dealing some big money out to the young guys lately. This one's just hysterical, especially with Torts in town now. Tony DeAngelo gets traded to the Flyers and then signs a 2-year, $10 million contract. A lot of thoughts on that one on Twitter, all of which were funny. You need to follow Evil Gritty if you don't already, because that shit was hysterical. Billy Husso. I actually think this one is underrated and honestly has a bigger impact on Detroit than I think, or on St. Louis than it does Detroit in this instance. Husso gets dealt to the Detroit Red Wings, and then he signs a 3-year, $14.25 million deal. I'm less talking about Detroit in this one and more talking about St. Louis. It sounds like Binnington's back to being, having the net solo.
Or at least they think so. I mean,
I think so.
The dude's been pretty shaky for 2 years ever since winning a cup. So it'll be interesting to see which Binnington we get, but I love this for the Red Wings. I think this is an absolute home run with where they are. And guys, they might be good this year.
Yeah, they might be. They might be.
I mean, they made a little bit of a push last year even. So I totally agree with you. I think they could definitely be sneaky this year.
So just quick question to you guys. I mean, why would St. Louis do this if Husso honestly was the better tendy between him and Binnington, and he's younger?
I don't know. I think the playoffs kind of bit him in the ass because they started going back and forth, and then Binnington got hurt. And that's the only reason Husso got back in the net. I don't know if this was maybe a salary cap stunt. I mean, we'll get into this in a second.
I also think it comes down to the fact that they know they could get way more for Husso, and they're just kind of gambling on the idea that Binnington did win them a cup, and hopefully he's still got his game down in there somewhere and he can find it. So
if I have two of the same thing, these guys are both interchangeable in the net right now. Let me just get whatever I can for who's going to give me more.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it, Nick. I think they're kind of the same guy. It's just Husso, you kind of know what you're going to get, and Binnington can either steal you 10 games in a row or lose you 10 games in a row. So,
exactly.
I don't know. I do like that for Detroit, especially with Nedeljkovic in there as well. That's going to be a nice little 1-2 punch. This is probably, I'd say, the biggest signing, second biggest signing in free agency. Philip Forsberg agrees to an 8-year, $68 million deal with the Nashville Predators. Not a whole lot to say.
I'm done.
Great job by the
Philip
Preds.
Forsberg news. No more trade news. No more signing news. This is the last I want to hear about it because we've gone through this how many times?
A lot.
And yes, I'm heavily biased because it pains me physically every time I hear his name spoken. But
yeah, good old Marty Erat. You can thank him. But yeah, good job by the Preds. I mean, they keep their ace basically on the forward core. We've got another goalie swap. So Colorado obviously got rid of Kemper, who goes to Washington. We'll talk about that deal in a second. To replace him via trade with the Rangers, they acquired goaltender Alex Georgiev, and he then signs a 3-year, $10.2 million ticket. A little bit of a gamble, in my opinion, especially just coming off a cup and still having a lot of years with that window open. But the young Russian goaltender has his chance to prove himself.
And I think that's the best way to put it. He's got a chance. He's got a 3-year deal here, $10 million, like you said. I don't know about this one. We haven't really seen him much in a starting role unless Igor was hurt, and that was only for a handful of games here and there. So who knows what's going to happen with this one. As an Avs fan, I would not be a fan.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I've always thought that Georgiev had some potential that was getting kind of squashed a little bit by the situation in New York. Not really enough room for him to grow and step up there with Igor. But yeah, I'm rooting for the guy. I hope that he can find his game, not even find his game, but, you know, just find a way to kind of break out as an actual starting goalie in Colorado.
Yeah, for sure. Moving on and sticking with Colorado, they signed Valeri Nichushkin to an 8-year, $49 million deal. You want to talk about cashing in on a playoff run? This is right there in the dictionary, because this guy was a journeyman, always had like a lot of skill and potential, never really found his spot, goes to Colorado, had a decent season, but the playoffs really are the moneymaker for this ticket.
Like 25 this year, right?
Yep.
Honestly beats me. Good question. But the playoff run, I mean, Mac, we were even saying for gambling purposes, come the finals, he could have been a dark horse for Conn Smythe.
Yeah, he was definitely in the conversation. That's for sure.
What do you guys think? I think 8 years is a lot for a guy who's had like one stretch of good play, but I understand it.
I think this is a guy that really excels when he's playing on a good team. Like you saw him struggle in Dallas. He had that year that everyone talks about where he didn't score. Now he comes over to Colorado. He's got this sort of like, you know, Tom Wilson-esque game where he can, you know, chip in offensively, but he can also run guys over in the corner. And I think it just worked. So, I mean, if he can keep that up for these 8 years, great. But I mean, that is a lot of money.
Yeah,
it is. Yeah, I mean, that's just a little bit over $6 million per, if I'm not mistaken, with my mediocre 5th grade math.
Which would be more than McKinnon currently, correct?
Yes, another little controversy. So
crazy.
Yeah, Colorado's stacked. You know, they might have lost their starting goaltender, but personally, I don't think you need the best goalie. Kemper's not the best goalie in the league, but Colorado found a way.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. We're going to move on to what I would call the biggest free agent signing in the offseason so far. We got Johnny Hockey. Johnny Gaudreau was offered an 8-year, $10 million per deal from Calgary, stiffs him, gives him the finger, leaves, tries to sign with Philadelphia. Their incompetent GM can't actually find the cap space to sign him, and instead he goes just across the Ohio River to the Columbus Blue Jackets on a 7-year, $68 million contract. Holy shit. What are the thoughts, boys?
I actually, in a weird way, like, obviously I hate the Flyers. I mean, CBJ is also in our division, so that doesn't make a difference. But typically I'm like, I don't want to see like the Flyers, the Penguins, or the Rangers get like anybody good or anybody that I like, right? In a weird way, I would have rather Johnny Hockey go to Philadelphia than the Columbus fucking Blue Jackets, just because it's like, at least that would be kind of cool for like the game in a way, you know, like that would have been pretty sick if the Flyers got Johnny Hockey and he had like torts and shit. Like, I don't know, that would have been.
I could have lived with the Islanders too.
Oh, I definitely could have lived with the Islanders. CBJ, my problem here is I like Johnny Ham and Cheese, and I'm just bummed that he's just going to go like disappear into like the stratosphere in Columbus. Like literally, I have a buddy who's from like just outside of Columbus, and he like is a decent sports fan too. Doesn't know a ton about hockey, but like the other day he was talking to me and he's like, so like, when's Ohio going to get a hockey team? And I was like, you have one. Like, that's that's the exact example of like why I hate this, because it's like, they don't even know what the fuck is going on. They're like, oh, we like signed somebody. Okay. Like whatever. Like it's so stupid. So that's my rant on that.
Oh my God.
Nick, what are your thoughts on the deal?
I mean, this is just so beyond dumb. It's just like, it's like, oh, it's going to be Philly. Oh, it's going to be New Jersey. Oh, it's going to be New York. And I'm like, just stay the fuck out of my metro, please.
Even Jersey would have been cooler than this.
Exactly. Like, you know, to quote Shrek, get out of my swamp. Like, please get out of my swamp. And this guy goes, oh, and you start to hear there's another team in play. And I'm like, great. Like St. Louis. It's like, no, Columbus. Fuck. Like, come on.
Yeah. Give me something a little better to work with.
It's like, and then you look at their roster, it's just like, let's put 2 really good players on the wing on the first line and nothing down the middle. So like, I mean, I don't know. This team will probably end up like still knocking on the door for a playoff spot though.
It's just how they work. They're always in the mix somehow. They're never an easy out. Jackson, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna be a little bit different. I know Columbus isn't as huge a market as some of these other teams, but I feel like it's a little disrespectful. Some people talking down on them.
Oops.
I'm happy. I'm honestly happy that he left Calgary for the simple fact of how salty he's made everyone there. I don't know if all of you saw that clip of that news anchor or whatever.
Oh yeah,
Like
That was
in Calgary. I was just like, come on. Like we've all had like big guys leave our teams in our cities at one point. You don't have to be petty about it. But I guess now that they're in the Eastern Conference, I've always had a weird soft spot for Columbus, especially after they made the greatest meme ever and beat Tampa Bay in a sweep. So for his bag, I don't like it because there was rumors he was going to get like 15 or like 17.5 million a year from Calgary at one point, but
the max, whatever it is. Yeah,
simply just the storylines. I think it's going to be interesting, and people still trying to figure out like, why the hell did he go to Columbus?
I also just don't like it because the Flames, I've said on this show before, but the Flames have like low-key been one of my favorite Canadian teams for a while. I like their image and just their like they sort of are that like bad boy
fun hockey team. Very fun hockey team, or they were, but
yeah, and now they're just like gone. Like just there's not like Kachuk's probably leaving now too, and I'm kind of bummed about that. So
of course he comes to the Metro. That's all my last comment is. However, I will say you got Line, you got Gaudreau, that one kid, that prospect, Kent Johnson, nasty.
Yeah, the kid from Michigan.
Yeah, insanely skilled.
Elvis is totally capable of shutting it down in net for that team too. Like if you look at it on paper, they actually are starting to look decent.
And
Werenski?
Do they still have Korpisalo?
I thought they dished him somewhere, but maybe they do.
Don't know. But I don't know. They kind of got a couple guys that are like key guys you want to watch. Be an interesting team. I don't know if I'd say fun team, but interesting team.
Yeah.
Moving on, this was a big trade, and I think that Mac and Nick are going to have a lot of thoughts about this one. A stunning trade. The Golden Knights send Max Pacioretty and Dylan, help me, Coghlan to the Hurricanes for nothing, literally. So, thoughts, comments, concerns.
Oh, you stupid idiots. Like, what do you think you're doing? Like, it's like, okay, we'll give Nick Suzuki to the Canadians for Max Pacioretty, and then we'll give Max Pacioretty away for nothing.
to the Metro.
Genius.
Yeah. To the Metro.
And of course it's to the Metro once again. Like, of course the Hurricanes somehow found their way into that deal and are just like going to reap the benefits of it and not have to pay anything.
I hate the Golden Knights so damn much because they continually just screw up their cap space every year where they have to trade somebody good away to actually have cap space to sign somebody else good. Like
they refuse to like wait on players too,
or
like,
just invest.
They're so impatient. Like they just fucking, if they don't like how a guy played, or even if they do like how a guy played for a year or two, they're like, yeah, that's enough though. Next. Like
if you're a player on that team and you're talking with your GM or coach for that like matter, like, and they come to you and say like, yeah, we're going to re-up you for 2 years. And you're going to go, how do I believe any of this? Because you've said this to everyone, coaches, players, whatever. And
I just want to know if they have a master plan of some sort. It doesn't seem to me that they do. It doesn't seem like they're thinking more than like 2 days into the future at a time. Like literally they're just like,
oh yeah.
See, they think it's a slot machine where you just keep switching stuff around and hitting the button and eventually it'll all come around.
I was actually thinking,
I love it. That's good.
I think they've kind of adopted like the LA sports teams market ideology where it's like, just get the star players every cycle and eventually we'll win because we had that one good year when we were actually a team.
Yeah. They think they're like an NBA team where it's like, oh, we lost in the playoffs. Okay, time to like completely change out our team. Try it again. Oh, didn't work. Okay, recycle it and like just.
Yeah, it's a little different with hockey. Nick,
Lakers.
Nick, I need a meme of some movie scene with a casino involved, and you just put like Vegas Golden Knights logo on the face. I need
It's
that.
just
And when the
just like
machine goes,
Eichel,
you've got
Stone,
like
Pacioretty.
yeah, exactly. And then like do it again. You've got like Fleury, Laner, and Oscar Danks, freaking Malcolm Subban.
Oh
in
my
there.
God.
There have been reports that there are a lot of, well, one, this was a very unpopular move in the locker room. Pacioretty was beloved on that team. And secondly, I think guys are starting to realize like this is a rotating carousel. I mean, other than Carlson and Riley Smith, who we'll talk about in a second, is everybody gone? Maybe was Shea Theodore part of that expansion? I think he was, but it's like 3 guys left.
Maybe.
That's it, which is crazy because they're not that old.
Colin Miller's gone. I know that.
Yeah, I do know that. Speaking of Riley Smith, signed a 3-year deal for $15 million total. I think relating to what Jackson just said. Trade. You think so? I don't know. I like Riley Smith a lot.
I do. Well, I don't, but like that's just because of 2018. I genuinely speaking, I also think this is like a slight overpay by like 1 or 2 million, but I'm just nitpicking now.
No, I don't hate it. This is an interesting one. David Perron will not be returning to the Blues this year. He signed a 2-year, $9.5 million deal with the Red Wings. Yet again, I love what Stevie Y's doing. This guy was red hot in the playoffs for the Blues. Young team, and now they're getting this guy who's got a lot of swagger, a lot of playoff experience. I like this deal.
He's a son of a bitch too to play against.
Yeah.
This is a great deal for the Red Wings. I mean, it just like you think back on like those great Red Wings teams. They had guys like Holmstrom and Franz and that could just run you in the corner. And Perron will play that kind of game.
This team has some bullies now, if you think about it. Like Mo Sider on the blue line can run you over for sure. Now you got David Perron. It's unclear if they're going to keep what's his name? Mr. Controversial. Nobody wants him. He's unvaxxed or whatever. What's his name?
Oh, Bertuzzi.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Yeah.
The legend.
But yeah, he can bully you as well.
Yeah, definitely.
He's a son of a bitch to play against too. Moving on. This one I'm sure you guys have some comments about. Andre Burakovsky signs a 5-year, $27.5 million deal to the Seattle Kraken.
So my thing here is that he signed a 5-year deal to take a nap for 5 years, basically.
Pretty much.
Nice. Yeah, he's got 2 cups now, right? So
yeah, he's
he
like,
does.
That's cool. I'll just go like snooze for a little bit.
He can he's got 2 cups. He can match the fan that was congratulating him after the 2018 cup with the display behind the glass.
Cups. Yeah, that's right. Good.
Yeah, there you go. The Avalanche re-sign Arturi Lehkonen to a 5-year, $22.5 million deal. I mean, he's just a gamer, dude. He scores big goals at big time, so can't really argue with that. How to spend $160 million in 3 minutes by the Tampa Bay Lightning. They signed an 8-year, $68 million deal with Sergachev, an 8-year, $50 million deal with Chiarelli, and then an 8-year, $41.5 million deal with Eric Chernak. Wow, that's a lot of dough.
These are also like 3 of the guys that I think are very responsible for them winning back-to-back Stanley Cups and making it to a 3rd final. I mean, Cirelli, I think, should be up for Selke at some point because he's, in my opinion, right now, the best defensive forward in the game. Sergachev, I think you look at this and Chernak, like, McDonough's out, right?
Yeah, he's going.
This is who's taking over.
Yep. Obviously, Ryan McDonough gets traded to the Nashville Predators. If we miss anything on this list, by the way, blame ESPN because we're just going right off the list. It's not on us. The next deal we want to talk about, unfortunately, I like this deal and it just fits so fucking perfectly, but it is what it is. The Rangers sign a guy named Vinny Shocker. Vincent Trocheck signs a 7-year deal, almost $40 million. The new second-line center to replace Ryan Strome, who got signed by Anaheim later that week. Guys, like, what the hell? Like, this just fits so well. It's a guy named Vinny. He's pesky. He's a son of a fucking bitch to play against. Yeah, he scores big goals. He sells hard. He's got that like missing tooth. Like, it just all fits like the Rangers. Like, this is such a perfect signing for them, and I hate it.
I hate to say it. I love Trocheck. I think he's a hell of a player. This is one of the, like, if you could tell me, like, top 5 guys in the league that you want on your team, excluding like the superstars and shit, because obviously, but like, dude, this guy for sure. I love watching him play, and it's gonna suck to see him play for the Rangers now because he's a hell of a player. This is another one of those dudes I like always try to draft on my fantasy team.
Absolutely.
Points machine all year long. Mr. Consistent too.
As I know, because you and I literally draft or attempt to draft the same players every year. But
yeah, we do.
This is one where I saw this notification on my phone and my stomach just dropped. I was like, I can see this playoff overtime game winner now. I can see the face-off win coming right back to Panarin now, whatever line they put him on. This, I mean, bad news bears if you're a non-Ranger fan.
Yeah. You know who he reminds me of from back in the day, not now, but in his prime? He reminds me of Derek Stepan, the way he plays.
It's a good one.
He's got that like right-handed shot, same kind of size, block shots, kills penalties, could play power play, scores big goal. He just does everything well. It's
and he gets moved a lot too.
Yeah, and he gets moved a lot. Speaking of the Rangers, they lose out on Andrew Kopp in free agency to the Detroit Red Wings on a 5-year deal. Just over $28 million. The Iser plan is in full commence. I love what the Red Wings are doing this offseason. We're going to move on to what I would call maybe the third biggest deal, depending on who you are. Claude Giroux officially signs a 3-year deal to the Ottawa Senators for $19.5 million. What are your thoughts?
Dark horse team right away. I think I even, when the news came out, I like quote tweeted it. And I'm like, I'm liking what the Senators are doing. They have really solid base, and their top 6 is just incredible. And the fact that they were able to re-sign one of their big pieces that we'll get to later. I mean, Senators are going to be a fun team to use in NHL 23, but they're also going to be a really fun team to watch in real life. So
definitely. And I'm a big fan of those uniforms. They're starting to grow on me a lot.
They're so sick.
Like, I love the simplistic logo as opposed to the stupid 3D one that they had for like 4 years. And then they changed, like Harry, when they went to the conference finals against the Penguins, like they would change their stupid uniform like every 3 years or something. And it just went from bad to worse to what the hell are you doing?
Yeah, that black one is awesome with just the flat like emblem on it. Really good.
If you're new here, we don't talk about players. We just talk about jerseys. And how stupid
That's true. It's the most important part.
It's a very popular thing.
It doesn't matter if you are good. You just have to look good.
Exactly. Fake it till you make it.
I have a very important question for Nick and Mac. Is the orb of confusion following him to Ottawa, or are we officially going to maybe realize he's still got a little bit in the tank?
I'm thinking it follows him.
So hear me out. We're going to get scientific here, which it's me. So that's fucking scary.
Right,
but
let's hear it.
You know how like they would talk about like cells that when they got so big, they would split into 2 smaller.
I like where you're going with this.
Yes, that one, mitosis. I knew it was mitosis or meiosis or something. Anyways, I think the orb is now divided. I think half of it went to Ottawa, and I think half of it stayed in Philly because
you're right. Actually,
they're still very confused because they thought with Johnny Gaudreau that he would just show up. It's like, no, you do have to offer him something, and then he comes to play for you.
Well, they're also still very confused because like, just like we saw in this past postseason when he was with the Panthers, there was tons of Flyers fans that were like rooting for the Panthers and being like, oh my God, like get Claude a cup. And like, they still seemed very confused about him being able to like go win a Stanley Cup, you know?
Yeah.
And so I would say you're absolutely right. Half of it stays in Philly because he'll still have his original orb following of all the confused followers being like, yeah, go Claude Giroux. But then there's a bunch of Senators fans now that inherit the other half of the mitosis orb.
Definitely.
And,
I wonder how many more teams he's going to play on before Flyers fans are like, all right, go Ducks. All right, go Wild. Wait a minute. Like,
yeah.
I really need
the Penguins and Flyers fans are like, wait a minute. Yeah.
Go
what
Rangers.
happened?
I'd be confused.
What happened?
I need a mitosis meme so bad on TikTok right now. With Giroux's face just getting split in half and like melting. Yeah, that'd be great. All right, moving on. We got a little goalie drama to talk about. So the Toronto Maple Leafs, they ditched Jack Campbell, who they didn't even make a contract offer to, apparently. He signs with the Oilers for a 5-year, $25 million deal. And in the meantime, the Maple Leafs go with an all-star tandem that we all saw coming of Matt Murray and Ilya Samsonov. I don't even want to like ask like a question about each contract. I want your guys' opinion. Who's going to have better goaltending this year, the Leafs or the Oilers?
No.
I think
Yeah.
so. Okay, so call me crazy. I think in a weird
You're
way, Murray's
crazy.
going to find it.
I hope so. I don't think you're totally off, but I think it's going to be better.
I think because he's from there originally, right? Or lived there or has some connection to
he's
there or
got-
something.
Is it the who's the Greyhound? The Sault Marie Greyhounds
Yeah.
or whatever?
Oh, right. I forgot about this.
Dubas was the GM of the Greyhounds when Murray played for the Greyhounds. So they have a little bit of history there.
Do you know who the coach was of the Greyhounds that Dubas hired?
No.
Sheldon Keefe.
Oh my God.
Wow.
It's coming full circle.
Yeah.
Wow.
Interesting.
Wow.
I could see Murray finding his game. To me, all three of the goalies we just mentioned, Murray, Samsonov, and Campbell, all three of them have something to prove this year. So, I mean, that should be a good thing. The only thing that I worry about for Sammy is, to me, one of his biggest problems in Washington was confidence. Like, he would get on a roll and he'd be really good, and then he lets in one shitter, and then he's terrible for the next 2 weeks. And to me, going to Toronto made no sense because I immediately thought of that. And I'm like, that's the most like scrutinizing market in the NHL. And they are going to be very hard on him, just like they are.
Plus he's
all
Russian.
of their players. Yeah.
Yeah.
They
So,
give those guys no breaks whatsoever.
yeah, that's very true.
Yeah, that's a tough media outlet to walk into. Yeah, I don't know what the answer is. Who's got a better goaltending situation? I think honestly, that Campbell deal might be a little too fat for me.
I agree.
You know, he had one decent season. I mean, he had a good season. I'll call it like it is, but man, he had some bad stretches.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's,
I've just never understood the thought process with giving a unproven or shaky goaltender term.
Well, and to me, like the Leafs team he played for last year was better than the Oilers team that he's about to play for in terms of like
Depth. Yeah.
being able to help your goalie win games. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
the Oilers D, I think, is weaker than the Leafs D that he just played for. So if anything, he's going to need to be stronger.
Yeah. Should be interesting to watch.
yeah, and it's
You go.
it's just gonna say it's hard for me to trust any like halfway decent goalie in an Oilers uniform just between Mikko Koskinen, Mike Smith, Cam Talbot.
Yeah.
Like, if they need to get an actual elite goaltender, which means they're going to have a competent organization to draft one at some point. So, but that'll happen when pigs
Never.
fly.
Never.
So,
Yeah.
When you really think about it, all those names you just listed, they all kind of fall into the same category. It's like that, like, it's a dry market. We have no other choice.
It's a
so here
1B.
you go. Yeah. Or a 2A.
Yeah.
yeah.
So last two deals we'll talk about, and then we'll talk caps and pens. The Senators, they sign restricted free agent Josh Norris to an 8-year, $63.5 million deal. Big payday for the young stud who's coming off a really good season. And then Andre Palat finally ditches the Lightning, but of course he comes to the Metro and is joining the New Jersey Devils on a 5-year, $30 million deal. Good for him. He deserves it. Solid payday.
I won't be concerned about the Devils until they solve the goaltending problem, because I think they're still about 5 to 10 years away from doing that. But this is one I do not like at all. Heischer and him down the middle is a nightmare scenario for anyone in the Metro, especially teams that struggle in the neutral zone. Just trying to think of one off the top of my head.
Hughes too. I mean, they're deep. They're very deep.
Watch Vanacek just be unreal for them, and just this team absolutely like tears apart the Metro and like finishes like second or some bullshit.
I don't know why the Caps are like hell bent on like trading a player to the Devils like every 2 years. It's just
Yeah, we love it. We're like, oh,
Zubris,
Siegenthaler? Here you go.
Johansson, Siegenthaler, Vanacek.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Let's get to the Caps deals. We'll run through these a little quickly. Kemper, you guys landed him. Good job. You got him on a $26.5 million deal, AAV of 5.25. What are your thoughts?
Initially, I was kind of like, okay, I hope we don't sign Kemper, just because I was worried he was going to be too expensive. I also worry about the injury problems that he's had in the past. Now that I've had some chances to look into it more and kind of mull it over, I am happy about it. I'm excited to see him in a Caps uni, excited to see what he can do for us. Definitely is an upgrade from last year. You can't deny that. I am still a little bit worried about his injury problems, but that's not really the kind of thing that is worth worrying about until it happens. So, yeah, I will see. I don't hate the term. I think when all things are considered, him and Lindgren, the amount of money that they're each getting, like that they're getting total, it's pretty cheap to pay for pretty good goalie tandem.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I had the same initial reaction as you. I was worried that the Cup was going to make this deal come in at about like 6.5, maybe even 7 per. So I'm happy with the 5.25. Yeah, I like this. It had to be done. There was no other option really. They kind of backed themselves into a corner, but they got the guy they were going after. So you have to be happy with that.
I will say the Lindgren thing is a little strange to me. I sort of don't get the logic in signing a guy like that instead of promoting Zach Fucale. Obviously, we're biased here because we're big fans of the guy and we've talked to him. But to me, Charlie Lindgren and Zach Fucale are nearly identical in terms of experience and ceiling, right? Like they both have a chance to break out and be a really good goalie in the NHL. Neither of them have had a real shot to prove that yet. But I don't really get what the Caps like about Lindgren that they didn't like enough about Zach or whatever. So that's my one qualm there. But I think he'll be a decent goalie. So I guess there's nothing I can really be upset about.
Yeah, I echo every single word of that. I would have just given Zach the backup spot and had him learn from a Cup winning goaltender.
The thing is like Kemper, he's a Band-Aid a little bit. And that worries me for you guys, because should he go down or should he need some nights off, I don't think he's that goalie who's going to get, 60 starts in a year. I think he's going to be a good, like 50-ish. Now you got Lindgren and Fucale, which, obviously huge fans of Zach, and I hope the best for him. But you're talking about a lot of inexperience in net. And that's the one thing that I would be a tiny bit worried about. Speaking of Caps goaltenders, they got rid of Phoenix Copley. He went on to the LA Kings. So if you're looking at, depth chart, you got Kemper, Lindgren, and Fucale as your threes going in.
Yeah.
And I will let Jackson chime in on this one. 2 former Blackhawks are headed to the nation's capital. We've got Eric Gustafson and Dylan Strome, both signing with the Washington Capitals. You 3 can duke it out.
It's 3 former Blackhawks if you count Krabborg.
Wait, what?
Hey, what? Crap.
Nick knows what I'm talking
Nick,
about.
help.
Explain.
Nick, I need you.
So the Caps signed that Finnish player, their like first Finnish player
Borgstrom?
ever. Yeah, he signed Henrik Borgstrom, who played at DU with Tarek and Troy Terry and all those guys and everything. And I just sent Mac and I were like going back and forth about like stupid SpongeBob stuff, and I sent him the video of the episode where SpongeBob thinks Mr. Krabs is a robot and he's doing like the robot dance, and the YouTube video is just titled Crab Borg.
God damn it. I hate this.
Wait, is it beep bop beep boop beep or beep bop boop?
I hate all of you. Nick is literally crying, like can't contain it.
Krabborg, dude. You heard it here first. He's gonna be the next best player on the Cavs.
You heard it here first, and I absolutely love that signing.
Yeah.
Nice.
Low risk, high reward.
Jay, you want to fill these guys in on what they're about to get?
So, sure. First of all, I like the deal for Gustafson. Nice little 1-year, $800K deal. Pretty solid. For him, he's pretty much a bottom 4 offensive defenseman. He's not going to really give you anything defensively, even when he was like really good with the Blackhawks. So decent, like maybe power play defenseman as well. Put him nowhere near a goddamn penalty kill. Strome is a weird case because I didn't really know a ton about him initially when we traded Nick Schmaltz for Strome, and he had that incredible run. He's good, but he's going to be another guy that's not going to play defense really at all. He's a good offensive guy, good solid center, probably good second or third line center at this point, but can give you some value. on the power play, and then Borgstrom is literally just a fourth line grinder or whatever. So
He's a SpongeBob meme now, apparently. But,
He
yeah.
is. Yeah.
Yeah, you got to think with the Backstrom injury news coming out that Strome deal has something to do with that. They need someone to fill in that second line role. So overall, Nick Mac, if you had to grade the Caps off season, what would you give it? A, B, C, D, F, whatever.
Say like a B plus or something like that. I mean,
I'm good with a B plus.
Seen Strome score some seriously impressive goals, so we know the potential is there. Another guy I think we forgot to put on this list here is Connor Brown, that I'm really excited about.
That's
from
the
Ottawa.
big one for me.
I think that's a great sign. I'm really excited to see him play for the Caps. But yeah, I think overall B plus. It was one of the more exciting free agencies in recent memory in terms of like signing both a large quantity of players, but also like all of them are like household names that like we all know if we're following NHL pretty well, you know.
It was weird because it was like you always root for chaos when you get near free agency, and then like the day comes and you're like, wait, like why are you taking my players?
Yeah, right. You're like, wait, I didn't want this. Oh wait,
Wait, no, I'm not done playing with them yet.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel you on the exciting off season as we are shifting into Penguins news here. It was definitely a anxiety induced 2-week period for me. A lot going on. Won't spend too much time on this. We got to wrap up soon, but the Penguins keep the band going, man. It's kind of crazy. If you would have asked anybody in Penguins media, nobody thought that this was possible. We had Jesse Marshall on a couple months ago where I literally asked him, like, are they keeping Malkin or Letang? And is there any chance they do both? And he said, there's no chance they keep both. And somehow, I don't even want to say Hextall did it. I'll say Crosby did it. So they signed Chris Letang to a 6-year, $36.6 million deal. They signed Ricard Raquel, which a lot of people thought he was gone. He signed a 6-year, $30 million deal. And then the night before free agency, somehow Sidney Crosby works his way down to Florida and talks Gino off a cliff. He eventually signs a 4-year, $24.5 million contract and is not going anywhere. Dude, I thought Malkin was gone, like dead serious. I think everybody thought he was gone when he said he was testing free agency. He's a little bit of a head case. He gets very emotional. I think he felt a little disrespected by Hextall and FSG, but Sid talked him into it. There was rumors that Sid literally flew down to Florida and like talked to him and was like, dude, you're signing this fucking ticket and I don't care what happens. Like, you have to stay. And here we are. So, my thoughts on all of this, I'll make it in one sentence. The term sucks. Nobody's going to debate that, but they've got about, I'd say, 2 more years of really making any type of noise. And after that, we're going to suck. And you just kind of have to deal with the contracts at that point. So
the way the salary cap era goes.
Yeah, exactly. And here's what I'll also say. We just re-signed Rust, Raquel, Malkin, and Letang all for under $24 AAV, $24 million AAV. If you had told me that like before the offseason, I would have said you're on crack. So I don't know how they did that, but good for Hextall. I mean, he's doing his job. Couple little signings. They re-signed Pierre Oliver Joseph. He was the main piece in that Phil Kessel trade to Arizona. Obviously, that led to some deals that we'll talk about here shortly. And then fresh off a long playoff run with the Lightning, the Penguins actually agreed to a 3-year deal worth $8.25 million with Jan Ruda. I love this deal.
This is a load of barnacles.
Classic Penguins deal right there. Classic Penguins player. I feel like that guy was just born to wear black and gold for y'all.
I like that deal a lot. Hextall has made it clear that his job in previous teams and with this team too is to get him bigger. I think we've been pushed around far too much. I think I shared this graphic over the course of the playoffs, but there was like a metric of like teams with height and weight on an axis, and they would like judge the teams like, how big are they compared to the rest of the playoffs. And every team's like in the middle or to the right, and the Penguins are just all the way to like by themselves on the left. We're like the smallest team ever. And I think this helps. So obviously they signed some defensemen and then they trade some defensemen. John Marino goes to Jersey in exchange for Ty Smith and a 2023 third-round pick. I like this deal personally. You save some cap. I think that the ceilings are about the same. And Ty Smith, he can play. I think he was stranded in New Jersey.
Definitely. I'm
Yeah.
surprised to hear you say that, though. I know he's got some upside, but I just, I remember you being so high on Marino when he first came in. So
His rookie year, he was really, really good, and he just kind of fell off. Like, he just never got his offensive game back. And for how much they were paying him, I think he's on like a $6 million or $5 million deal for the next like 4 years. You got Ty Smith still on like a basically rookie deal, so I like that. This one, I don't know how to feel. Jeff Petrie and Ryan Poland come to Pittsburgh in exchange for Mike Matheson and a 4th-round pick. Very controversial trade by Hextall. Matheson arguably was our most consistent defenseman, maybe behind Letang last year. Really good skater, only 28 years old, on a good contract. And then Petrie is a 34-year-old defenseman. He's had some injuries. I like Petrie's game. If the bubble year taught me everything, he destroyed us. So I know what this guy's capable of. I don't know a lot about Ryan Poling. I know he was a former 1st-round pick and that there's some potential there. Do I like the trade? I don't know. I know Petrie's big and he can play physical, so I'm all for it, I guess.
yeah, I think you guys were going to have to take a bath on one of them, and I think this might be it.
Yeah, I'm also not convinced this is it. I think there's something else coming because they have 9 defensemen under contract, and all of them like could very well be starters. Like a lot of like bottom pair guys. I'm just gonna say it, and I know every Penguins fan's thinking it. They got to go after JT Miller. I think they really need to go after him. And some defensemen, I have a feeling it's going to be Oliver Joseph because he's the young up and coming stud. Maybe they deal him and a pick and Kapanen and a couple other guys over to Vancouver. But I would love to see them go after JT.
I would.
Yeah. Thanks, Nick. I appreciate it.
Anytime, buddy.
Before we get to the rumors, I think Mac has a word from our sponsor, SharpBreak.
Sure do. Before we move on, just wanted to remind you that this season, all of our picks are powered by SharpRank. SharpRank created the first ever cross-sport rating system, ranking bettors from any sport on one leaderboard that anyone can dominate, even you. SharpRank is backed by some of the biggest names in the sports gambling world, such as BetMGM, Betway, and Sports Illustrated. Download the free app for iPhone and Android today. And that's just about it, right? We just got a couple of rumors here. And
so Matt Tkachuk probably going to be dealt this week. That's basically every hockey reporter out there. We'll see what happens. Go St. Louis. And then Kadri. The Avs are still in the mix, but it's rumored that the Isles are the top team right now in contention. They just got to clear some cap.
wow.
We'll give some news on that. Of course, Metro. Let's see what happens. But that's about all we got.
So he's going to sign there.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, probably.
That's all I got, fellas. You guys got anything else?
No, that's pretty much it.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah, thank you everybody for listening. Appreciate the love and support as always. Gonna go back on another break because that's just kind of what we need right now. So we'll see y'all in a couple of weeks, maybe a month, hopefully. I don't know. Until then, without further ado,
Class dismissed.